Russian forces are bearing down on Ukraine's second biggest city tonight, with fierce fighting breaking out on the streets of Kharkiv. Russian troops have reportedly entered the key city. This video shows Russian trucks driving between apartments. As the invasion intensifies in the east, the Russians have been slowed by fierce resistance in the capital, Kyiv. We have correspondents in Ukraine, Poland and the United States. But first, here's Europe correspondent Isabella Higgins in Lviv.
Putting their lives on the line, an unarmed Ukrainian attempts to block a tank rolling towards the capital. On the streets of Kyiv, shots are exchanged between armoured vehicles as citizens look on from their windows. This is the fierce Ukrainian resistance that's slowing Vladimir Putin's advance.
The world sees Ukrainians are strong, Ukrainians are powerful, Ukrainians are brave. They are on their native land and they will never give it to anyone.
Despite the scars of war clear to see across Ukraine, it hasn't dented the morale of the defenders. This video shows a Ukrainian driver stopping by a Russian tank that's run out of fuel. With the constant threat of a missile attack, air raid sirens ring out over empty streets. Many who've remained in Kyiv are now living underground.
At dinner time, right here, and some school time, right here.
Others are making petrol bombs and picking up guns, some for the first time.
At first, we were scared, really scared. But now we are ready to fight. And fight like hell. So.
I've only shot a gun once at a shooting range. Actually, I don't have much experience, but I'm a quick learner.
In my opinion, is worth at least 7 Russian soldiers.
Russian forces have been accused of targeting civilians, including at a blood donation centre in the besieged city of Kharkiv in Ukraine's northeast.
We are absolutely appalled by the Russian crimes against humanity which we see throughout Ukraine. In the last 72 hours, the Russian army attacked kindergartens and orphanages.
There are concerns teams of sabotage and reconnaissance groups are already operating in Kyiv.
Just today, civilians were shot by the rockets, and it's happening in the heart of Europe.
It's one of the reasons people of the capital, the cities to the west. Here at the Lviv train station, you can see just how many people are transiting through this city. On one side, you have a huge traffic jam. On the other, crowds of people. Some are making their way to another country. Others are arriving from besieged Ukrainian cities. Across the country, people are on the move, either fleeing, fighting, or picking up the pieces. Isabella Higgins, ABC News, Lviv.
And our correspondent Isabella Higgins is in Lviv for us tonight. Isabella, we're hearing about a Russian advance in the city of Kharkiv. What more can you tell us?
That's right, Juanita. The eastern city of Kharkiv has been under intense attack since this invasion started, and it seems that there is a fresh offensive happening now. There are reports that there are Russian tanks and troops entering the city limits. Already many residents have fled from this city that was once home to more than 1.5 million people after explosions went off earlier in the week. But those who remain are being told to stay inside, to take shelter, not to go outside, being warned that it is a volatile and dangerous situation in that city. So while all eyes may be on the capital of Kyiv, it's an important reminder that there are many areas in this country that are under siege.
And the Ukrainians appear to be extraordinarily resilient despite this heavy bombardment. Is that the sense that you're getting where you are?
That's absolutely the sense that I get, Juanita. People seem to be firmly in one of two camps. They're going to protect themselves or their children, or they're staying and they plan to be here to the bitter end. They feel this is a sense of duty to protect their country. They are so devastated by what Russia has done to Ukraine that they were willing to take up arms. People I spoke to say that they had never held a firearm before, and now they are more than willing to join the military offensive. There was a lineup of young teenage boys who are under 18 who wanted to fight. So this is the scenes that we're seeing here. This is how committed people are to standing up and fighting. So Ukraine, their military may be outnumbered, but they've made it very clear that they will not be surrendering and that they will give everything they have to this fight.
Isabella Higgins speaking to us there from Lviv. Some of Russia's biggest banks have been hit hard by the West's latest round of economic sanctions. The US, EU and their allies have agreed to cut them off from SWIFT. That's a payment system that Russia relies on for its gas and oil exports. More from our North America correspondent, Barbara Miller.
Around the globe, anger at Russia's invasion of Ukraine is spilling onto the streets. For some, the war brings back painful memories.
I'm also Georgian, so I know the exact pain of what it's like to have a Russian army inside your country. So it was my duty just to come out here.
In Russia, protesting comes at a cost. Across the country, hundreds have been taken into custody for daring to publicly oppose the war. As the assault on Ukraine intensifies, the international community has hit back with its toughest measures yet, aimed at paralysing Russia's economy, cutting some of Russia's banks off from the SWIFT financial transaction system.
Putin embarked on a path aiming to destroy Ukraine. But what he's also doing, in fact, is destroying the future of his own country.
SWIFT is the dominant global payment system for high-value transactions, connecting 11,000 financial institutions in more than 200 countries. It doesn't move money itself, but information to make payments happen, averaging more than 42 a day last year. Russia has the second most users on the platform. Cutting Russia off could hit its economy immediately. International profits from oil and gas make up 40% of Russia's federal budget.
SWIFT is the mechanism that stops people making payments to Vladimir Putin's Russia.
The US and Europe will also target the assets of Russia's central bank and of the oligarchs. The White House has also announced a further $500 million in military assistance to Ukraine, including anti-tank missiles.
Behind the scenes, intense negotiations have gone into getting to this joint US-European position on the latest round of sanctions, in particular on SWIFT. Putin's war has strengthened the transatlantic ties which suffered so much under President Trump. But the assault on Ukraine continues unabated.
We need to please stop, sit down at the table, talk. We're in 21st century, we can talk.
So far, all the pleas and punishments seem to have fallen on deaf ears. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Washington.
As Russia's assault intensifies, tens of thousands of Ukrainians who can't stay and fight are seeking refuge in neighbouring countries. Poland has so far taken in most of those fleeing the violence. Our reporter Sean Rubenstein-Dunlop is in the Polish capital Warsaw tonight. Sean, how are those countries coping with the arrivals?
Well, here in Poland, which hosts the region's largest minority of Ukrainians, we've seen about 100,000 in just the last 2 days alone. They've been greeted by donations of clothing, food and other essential supplies at the border crossings as they come west. And it's not just Poland. Tent cities have popped up in neighbouring countries like Romania.
A mother is reunited with her children. This stranger in yellow brought her precious cargo after their father was blocked from leaving. One story out of tens of thousands of people crossing into neighbouring countries to escape the war. The biggest numbers are coming to Poland. It's already home to more than 1.5 million Ukrainians. At the border crossing, cars queue for kilometres. Thousands walk instead through the freezing cold with food, exhausted children and anything they can carry. On the other side, relatives wait anxiously for a familiar face.
We heard people were fighting to cross the border. The connection isn't good, so we could only send text messages. They didn't have any food and they were walking on the road. The kids were freezing.
We're waiting for my sister, my aunt and 3 children aged 5, 6 and 12.
Once safe across the border, refugees sift through donations, paying the price of an unprovoked war.
Obviously, the situation is extremely fluid. We're watching, and the numbers and the situation is changing minute by minute. But right now, what we can confirm is that at least 150,000 people have fled.
There are fears that number could reach 5 million.
Ukraine's western neighbours have opened their doors to an endless stream of refugees. Romania, Moldova and Slovakia are ramping up resources on the border. And even the famously anti-refugee governments in Hungary and here in Poland are taking a new stance, pledging to shelter and support Ukrainian civilians.
Almost all the arrivals are women and children. Men below 60 aren't allowed to leave Ukraine. For the tens of thousands more still making the dangerous journey, they're hoping there's refuge before it's too late. Sean Rubenstein Dunlop, ABC News, Warsaw.
Here, the federal government is prioritising visa applications from Ukraine and indicating that more refugees from there will be accepted for migration. As well as the humanitarian help, Australia is now offering military support via NATO. Here's political reporter Melissa Clark.
Even from afar, the conflict is close to home for many. At this Ukrainian Orthodox church, a Sunday service for the faithful and the fearful.
May the God of mercy comfort those left behind, and may the God of justice answer all our prayers.
Well, we'll go and pray for your homeland.
The Prime Minister came bearing prayers and promises.
Thank you for your support.
For the first time, offering military support for the Ukrainian government.
We'll be seeking to provide whatever support we can for lethal aid through our NATO partners.
That means money to NATO to send weapons to Ukraine. As for Russia, banning all trade isn't being ruled out.
We're considering every option.
We will give bipartisan support to the most comprehensive and heaviest sanctions that Australia can and should take.
As Ukrainians escape the onslaught, the disaster of war is creating a humanitarian crisis.
We are processing all visas that are coming in from Ukraine as a priority.
Australia's immigration scheme, having flatlined during COVID, will now focus on Ukrainian refugees, workers, family members and students.
Australia will be very prepared to take more and more and more, as we have with Afghanistan.
We are ready to provide any support on a humanitarian level that is required.
New South Wales is pushing for a resettlement program in addition to the existing cap on humanitarian and refugee places.
The ultimate numbers will be determined down the track, and that will involve, I have no doubt, taking numbers in addition to our normal program.
In this grave moment of foreign affairs, bipartisanship has prevailed. The government and opposition are aligned in their response to Russia's invasion, and both have cautioned against conflating what's happening in Europe with hypothetical actions China could take in this region. Melissa Clark, ABC News, Canberra.